Great. Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. Very excited for this topic. It's our third One Connect webinar in the webinar series. So today we're going to be looking at performance reviews and tuning for optimal execution. So just before we get started, just to give you a quick overview of the agenda and what we're going to be looking at today. So I have some introductions from myself and Hanley, and then we're going to dig into a little bit around what the service tiers are and why this is something that you need to be aware of. We're then going to be looking, I'll hand over to Hanley, and we'll be looking at the system architecture of the ERP system and introducing you to the OneOptimise report, which is something that we deliver within Bluebridge One. So just to introduce myself, my name's Emma Barnard. I'm one of the key account managers at Bluebridge. I've been within the business for 8 years now, and I look after some of our key accounts and work very closely with NetSuite and with the wider team within Bluebridge One to make sure that our customers are getting the right support.
Thanks, Emma. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Hanley Steinberg. I'm the Principal Solution Architect for the Technical Department at BB1. I'm a computer scientist at heart, and I enjoy the challenge of the ever-growing, evolving IT industry. I've been involved with BB1 for more than 5 years now, 2 years as a contractor, and now more than 3 years as a permanent employee.
Great, thank you. So just before we get started, please could you take a few moments just to read our safe harbour statement. So before I dive into a little bit more around the NetSuite service tiers, I just wanted to highlight the Bluebridge One Centre of Excellence team. So Hanley is a member of this team. She looks after the technical COE. But this is a group of senior consultants within the business who have a dedicated area, which is something that they are passionate about, and we really want to focus on finding the best solutions for our clients, and that's why we've introduced the COEs, the Centre of Excellence team. So as you might have attended the session before Christmas, which was hosted by Roy, and he's heading up the finance automation. So there will be more sessions coming up from the team going into 2025, which is very exciting. So why do we want to understand service tiers? Some of you may be legacy customers, maybe have been on NetSuite for a number of years. So it might be something that you're not familiar with. Some of the newer NetSuite customers will potentially maybe have already had service tier conversations or have a better understanding of service tiers. But I just want to highlight what the service tiers are. So these are different levels of service which are defined by the capacity and the performance of your NetSuite environment. Why do these matter? Well, they're there really to help you scale your business, so as you grow and adapt. And one thing I've highlighted here is you don't want to be caught by surprise. So what's meant by that is it's really understanding your NetSuite environment and understanding what the trigger points are for tier upgrades, but it's also future-proofing your systems architecture. So the objectives of the session today will be understanding service tiers, their functionality and features. We're also going to dig into the performance dashboard. So that's something that you have access to, and Hanley will go into that in a bit more detail. And also around the Bluebridge One OneOptimise report and how that can assist you with understanding where you sit within those triggers, how to optimize, but also I think it's key to helping you build a business case for the wider business in terms of NetSuite architecture investment also. So the NetSuite tier upgrade process. So some of you may be aware of this, as I mentioned before, but NetSuite is monitoring your NetSuite environment, and there are KPIs and triggers which they are alerted to say that you are potentially in need to upgrade onto the next service tier. So those key triggers are users, so number of full license users, your monthly transaction lines, so that is monitored on a 6-month rolling average, and also your file cabinet storage. There's also something else to bear in mind around the concurrency and the concurrency limits. And they look at that, and that can be, you can purchase Suite Cloud Plus license that will then assist with your concurrency limits. So that's looking at your background scripts, your integration concurrency and scripts, and your CSV import queues. And Hanley will go into a lot more detail than I have there later on in the presentation around those limits. So you might want to take a screenshot of this, but I thought it's a really useful table to kind of show you how the service tiers are defined and what the KPIs are for those. So the majority of customers will start on a standard service tier, that is a shared environment, with up to 100 users, up to 100 gig of file cabinet storage, and 200,000 transaction lines. There is also capacity within that tier to have one Suite Cloud Plus license added to your account to help with that concurrency flow. As you can see, those go up as you go through Premium, Enterprise, and Ultimate. So we'll dig into this in a bit more detail once we go through the session later. But obviously, if there are any questions at all, please, you can reach out after the session.
Thanks, Emma. So yes, this is a topic that I'm quite passionate about, tuning your NetSuite instance to have the best optimal usage out of your system. This starts for me, it starts with a clear understanding of the ERP architecture, so that this will enable your business to plan for future growth, ensuring that the system can scale with the organization's needs. And it also allows stakeholders to understand the architecture to make informed decisions about system usage, tier upgrades, and also the capabilities and the capabilities of third-party integrations. So to understand the architecture of an ERP system, I would like to, please bear with me, I want to draw an analogy between the NetSuite system architecture, any ERP actually system architecture, and a manufacturing plant or manufacturing factory. So in an ERP, we've got 3 different layers. So the first layer would be, or I'm going to start at the bottom actually, because that's where the brains sit. It's the storage layer. That is the warehouse compared to your raw storage in your manufacturing plant. This is where your data is stored. This data is then used to support the rest of the flow of the manufacturing system. The next layer is the assembly line. I will go into detail of every layer, but this is just an overview. So the second one is the processing layer or the assembly line. This is where the raw materials is taken and it is transformed and it is worked with, and you have your assembly line, which then gives you products to work with. Lastly, it's your top line, your application layer. That can be compared to your factory controllers or managers in the factory that controls the assembly line using the raw materials. So if I want to dive deep into each of these layers, the first one is your storage layer. Now this is based on, for NetSuite, it's based on the Oracle database, which is a database system that has been around for many, many years. This is like your raw materials that's in your factory. This is where your data is sitting. Everything that's going to be used in your ERP system comes from your raw material storage in your warehouse. So the analogy here is just like your raw materials are stocked and ready for use in production. It stores the data that can be retrieved when needed. The second layer is the processing layer. It's like the assembly line in the factory that takes the raw material and transforms it into a finished product. So similar to how the assembly line uses machinery and workers and equipment and tools to turn raw materials into products such as cars or furniture, the processing layer takes these stored data. It applies business rules, and then it delivers usable results in the form of different transactions, different reports, interaction with the third parties. All of that is done by your processing layer or the assembly line. Lastly, you will have the application layer. Now, this is like the controllers or the managers that manage and supervises the use of the equipment and the tools and the all the track lines inside your factory that takes the raw material into and converts it into products. So just like the managers use control panels or monitors to oversee the assembly line, the application layer has a user interface for users to interact with the system and to guide operations. Your NetSuite architecture, if we take a dive into that now, from these three layers, are constructed similarly to these layers. So for example, your storage layer, as I said before, is your Oracle NetSuite database. That's where your data sits, and that's where we get all our intelligence and knowledge from. Assembly line is actually your scripts, your workflows, and all the internal NetSuite processes that happens under the hood. And then lastly, your user interface is what you are seeing as a user in your NetSuite account. And this also ties into your web services, your integrations, where you connect to third parties where data is retrieved and sent back and forth between the third party and NetSuite. To completely understand the intricacies of how NetSuite manages processing in the assembly line part of your NetSuite account, you need to understand the two types of processes that are taking place. First of all, the synchronous processes. That is where your user waits for responses. So for example, your user will enter an invoice, it will press save, and it will wait on the screen until the invoice refreshes and it loads again. That is synchronous. That is similar to the factory controller that prints a label on a printer, waits for it to complete, take the label out, and stick it onto a product. Asynchronous is any process that's triggered and happens in the background. This is for something like a CSV import, that's an asynchronous process, or a EFT payment file creation inside NetSuite. So similar to this, it will be your factory controller that starts the machine and the process just keeps on going until it's complete, where the machinery completes the manufacturing process. Now, if we can draw this back into the three different layers, firstly, you'll see the red layer in the middle. This is the assembly line, and this is where we are talking about the processing that takes place in your NetSuite account. So your synchronous processes, that's where it's under the user interface. That's when transactions are edited, saved, save searches are run and viewed on the screen. Then you also have your synchronous processes for your web service integrations. Now that means a third party will send data to NetSuite and an immediate response of, let's say, for example, they want to create a transaction inside NetSuite. If it's synchronous, that transaction will immediately be created and the internal ID of the transaction will be sent back to the third party. So those are your two synchronous processes inside NetSuite. Thereafter, you have your asynchronous. You'll see the red wording indicates the asynchronous. So first of all, it's your CSV imports. Then it's your processes that involve scripts that run in the background. For example, any scheduled script that is triggered or scheduled to run at 12 at night, that is using an asynchronous process. And then the last asynchronous one is when your integration, your third-party integration, sends a request into NetSuite, but it tells NetSuite you can process it in the background. Then that process does not immediately create the transaction and send the internal ID back. It just processes it, and the third party can then poll NetSuite until it is ready. So just to recap, you have your 2 synchronous parts and then your 3 asynchronous parts. Now, when I go into the next slide, you'll see why that is quite important to understand. So to improve NetSuite performance, there's a lot of things that we can do. But the one thing is adding Suite Cloud Plus licenses. The trick is to understand what parts of NetSuite will be made faster by your Suite Cloud Plus license. So if you go just back to the previous slide, the ones that are written in blue, those cannot be improved by Suite Cloud licenses, the processing of them. So it's the user interface synchronous process, and it's the SOAP and REST synchronous processes cannot be improved by a Suite Cloud Plus license. This does not include concurrency. I'll come back to concurrency a little bit later. So first of all, if you can look at processes, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Those lie number 2, number 3, and number 4. Those are the 3 things that your Suite Cloud Plus licenses can improve tremendously. So if I can just go back there, every tier has got a specific number of Suite Cloud Plus licenses that can be added. If you want to, you can take a screenshot of this screen as well, as Emma explained. So 2, 3, and 4 are the sections that I indicated on that second, on the image that we just had a look at. I would like to talk about integration concurrency next. So this you will see, this is the number 1 with the 3 arrows. Now concurrency is not processing power. Concurrency is how many requests can hit NetSuite at the same time. So let's say you have an integration, for example, a Shopify integration, and you want to send orders into NetSuite. Now, if you don't have a Suite Cloud Plus license, but you have a base limit, you've got standard tier, then you actually have only 5 concurrent integration requests that can come in. To improve that, you can add Suite Cloud Plus licenses. Similarly to your other tiers as well, if you have the enterprise tier, you can have 20 concurrent requests coming in without a Suite Cloud Plus license. So if you need to improve your, sorry, let me just go back there, your concurrency, and you've got more requests than what your base limit on your tier allows you, that is where your Suite Cloud Plus license comes in for concurrency. The rest is, for example, 2, 3, and 4. That's where your asynchronous processing will be boosted, and you'll have a powerhouse of more processing power available. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll come back to them to answer them. Okay, then OneOptimise in action. How do we take what we've learned now in the ERP structural system using the Suite Cloud Plus licenses and apply it into our NetSuite account? So to do that, we need to go take a step back and have a look at each customer and what it is that is actually happening inside their account. So what is a OneOptimise performance review? It includes reviewing your account holistically by looking at current modules, scripts, workflows, integrations, searches within the account, performing a health check and highlighting areas which may be causing a slowdown in the system. It is conducted by a specialized technical resource, and we do deep dive into our account to identify the potential optimization opportunities, as well as investigating the parts of your account that can be under strain and could also lead to problems and unsatisfactory performance, a degradation of the system, and even loss of operational actions. There's a standard and set of analysis that OneOptimise performance reviews include, but we also do bespoke analysis on your account based on the problems reported, as well as customizations in your account. It can also include adding monitors and scripts for a short time period into your account, whereafter we collect the data and we do analysis on that as well. We use these tools and scripts then to gather the data, and we have actionable recommendations. So when should one do a OneOptimise performance review? First of all, when you have user-reported performance issues. So your users have reported a slowdown, a specific area that's got a detrimental effect on your business operations. For example, your sales orders take a long time to add a line onto the sales order or to save it, and your customers are waiting in a line. That would be an absolute sign for a OneOptimise performance review. Then, when there's significant growth in the business that's forecasted for the future, such as a new branch, expanding into a new country, expanding, adding more warehouses, that is also a flag. Then adding a new NetSuite module to assess the impact and if the system is stable and capable of handling extra load, such as suite tax, such as a WMS, that is very important. Then any new third-party integrations. This should be looked at the performance of the system at the moment in conjunction with the expected volumes that you are expecting from this third-party integration. Also, you need to bring into account what some key factors, such as how long does the system have to process, for example, 1,000 invoices? Does it need to be done in 1 hour? Can it be spread over 6 hours? So those things are all decisions that can flow out of this OneOptimise performance review that will make it easier for the future for decision making. When there are any integration failures, for example, a third party reports that they are pushing data into NetSuite, but they see receiving failure messages back, that indicates that your concurrency, the number of simultaneous requests that are allowed, are not sufficient in your account. We need then to investigate if you can set concurrency limits, or if you can spread the load out with a third party, or even add a Suite Cloud Plus license. Then lastly, if there are any delayed asynchronous processes, for example, EFT payment file creation, a specialized report generation that's taken too long, overnight processes that is business critical, that runs over the day and slows up the system in the day. Those are all indicators for having done a OneOptimise performance review done. So it all starts with the APM dashboard. It's a NetSuite tool that you install into your account. And this is where we start to gather the data. So there's a lot of data that you can get from the APM that is in your account. However, to analyze and understand and make recommendations, it's actually advised to look at the whole system in a holistic view and draw comparisons between different areas and different sectors in the account. So some of the highlights that we supply with the OneOptimise performance reviews is, first of all, we evaluate your tier bounds. So the KPIs that Emma spoke about earlier, how does your account measure against those, and will they be flagged in the near future? Is there a possibility that they'll be flagged in the near future for a tier upgrade? Then we start by evaluating the synchronous processing that affects operations and users. So if you think back of the diagram that I show, it's a synchronous user interface processing. So on this screen, we usually look for an average of not more than 10 seconds for a record, edit, save, and new and view. If it's more than 10 seconds, we start investigating why. So something else that needs to be taken into consideration, not just the time, the average time it takes to save the transaction. It is also important to look at what's the throughput. In other words, how many of these transactions were saved or edited in that period of time, and how many users are impacted. If you look at this screen where the invoice save was 28 seconds, you will see that the throughput was actually quite low, whereas the purchase order is less, but the throughput is much higher. So the purchase order is 24 seconds versus the 28, but the throughput is 75 users are affected and 9,525 transactions were impacted. And those are the things that we look at in these performance reviews. We then look at what's the main contributor to this high execution time. Is it the server? Is it client side? Is it workflows? So this is the next level that we start diving into the results. So just for interest, this is, for example, a vendor payment save over, I think it was 30 days that I extracted it. You can see the light blue is the server time, the orange is the client time, and the yellow is the network time. This is something that needs to be investigated. Luckily, it is not, it was a once-off, it was not that pervasive throughout the process. But in conjunction with that, we need to look at the throughput. How many users is shown on the right-hand side, and the number of record instances is shown on the left-hand side. So whenever it's a high number of record instance and number of users, and you have a high response time, then we start looking even in greater depth. So how do we look in greater depth? We take that type of transaction and we look at specific edits and saves. As you can see, here is a timeline. This transaction took, it's an invoice, and it took 11 seconds to save. The lighter blue are workflows, the darker blues are scripts. Then this green is network, and the light green is client side. And what is nice, we can actually go onto each of these blocks and check which scripts or which workflows are in there. So if there is a slowdown on a specific type of transaction, we can pinpoint scripts, workflows, maybe NetSuite modules, because NetSuite modules also show up here. For example, your Suite Tax scripts will show up here as well. We can dive into those specific scripts and optimize them. The next part that we look at is save searches. Again, the throughput is very, very important. This account had very low save search execution times, which is very good. There's one here that is 20 seconds, that's the highest, but you can see the throughput is very low. Compared to the throughput of this one, it's 13133. So yes, that is quite a bit. Okay, then we have wait time by priorities. This is our processes of background processing power. So it involves your MapReduce scripts, and it also involves your scheduled scripts. So whenever they are slow or they take time, we can see that in these graphs, which is very useful to actually look at time throughout the day, maybe weekends. You can see there's a dip every 7th day, which is really very beneficial for us to investigate. This is processes, how many processes were used during the day. You can see there this account has got a lot of processing power, and it is maxing out quite a bit during the day. This is the processes heat map. So it shows us, for example, there's December the 17th. We can see during that time that account used 15 processes, and then through the day, there's a 7 a.m., there's lower processing power or processing use, and then it picks up again towards the evening. Now, what we do with this is, as part of the processor analysis, we look at specific scripts and we take an average execution time for a script. So that would mean it's actually a weighted execution time. You take the average time for a script that ran, and you times it by the number of completions that it had over the period. And that gives you a total execution time, or estimated total execution time of that script. And then you can start and rank them by the slowest, or the ones that have the biggest impact on execution time and waiting time, and optimize those specific scripts. The last part here is the concurrency. This is the number one that I showed you in the first diagram of the layers. It is how many requests hits NetSuite at the same time. Now, unfortunately, NetSuite does not tell us if that at the same time is 5 seconds, 3 seconds, a minute. We don't know. What we do know is if we see something like this, for example, there's a concurrency limit of 25, and the peak concurrency is 71. There's actually a the account is going to become unstable in terms of your integrations, because you have a 11% over the limit rate. And that means that you're going to start getting errors from your third party. They're going to say they push the data in and you're not going to receive it because NetSuite is just going to reject it. What we can do there is then we put concurrency limits in for certain integrations. They can only use a certain number of concurrent connections. You can also throttle the sending of these integration requests in your third-party side, or you can increase your Suite Cloud Plus license if that is needed. Okay, then the highlights. This is just a summary of what we look at, your service tier assessment, overall account health. Now, all of these, we write an executive summary that can be used for building a business case to investigate and optimize your system. So it's the service tier assessment, overall account health, response time when saving records, specific bottlenecks, utilization of queues and processes, processor execution performance, concurrency performance for web services, safe search performance, and then bespoke analysis results specific to your account. That is what I refer to if we put scripts into your account for, let's say, 24 hours, and we monitor we take timestamps and log those to a file, and we analyze those logs that we've made afterwards. Then once we do our recommendations, so there are a couple of things that we do. We don't always say buy a SuiteCloud Plus license. It is not what we do. We only recommend that if it's absolutely guided by the account and the business activities. So we identify bottleneck scripts and identify the ones that we recommend to be optimized. We evaluate your SuiteCloud Plus licenses. Now, this can be done in conjunction with your future growth or with integration volumes that might increase. We can set up prioritization of your asynchronous scripts. So that's your MapReduce and your schedule scripts. We prioritize the ones according to the execution time firstly, but also business impact. We can guide you on setting integration concurrency limits to ensure your continuous operation of all third-party integrations. And then there is the little cherry on the top is always your bespoke recommendations based on customized analysis for your specific account.
Great, thank you, Hanley. Fantastic presentation. So just before we finish up, I just want to go through, I think, some of the key takeaways from the session today. So why does a NetSuite performance review matter? Well, I think Hanley's done a really great job of explaining the ERP architecture and explaining why you as a business really need to be aware of your account health. I think the first point there around preempting system issues, it's one of those ways that you can identify and resolve potential bottlenecks before they impact the users. That's one thing that you don't want to be getting feedback from, really. It's a way to set a benchmark of your account health and be on top of that before there becomes an issue. The second one there is just understanding those performance KPIs, your key metrics like concurrency and response times, and being able to maintain that optimal performance within your account. So number 3 I've put on there is optimizing your system scalability. So just ensuring that your architecture can support your growth, making sure that you're aligned with your service tiers and you've got the SuiteCloud Plus licenses. I think it's important to kind of loop back to what Hanley said. From this report, it's not to try and sell you SuiteCloud Plus licenses or to say that you need to go up onto a new tier. It's to be able to make you aware of where you are, and if you are looking at growing, how you get there and what you potentially need to help support that. Now, the other thing is addressing those critical bottlenecks. So evaluating your scripts, workflows, save searches, and any of those integration errors, just to really improve that system efficiency. And I think lastly, a really important point, and it's something that comes up with a lot of my customers, is helping to support that, get a business case there, you know, in case if this is something that's coming up within the wider business and you need some support to help understand where these performance enhancements can be made and what needs to be outlined to help support that future investment. So before we finish up the session today, obviously, if you would like to have a OneOptimise performance review, please do reach out to myself or Esther. You may already know us, but if you're not aware of who your account manager is, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can either pass that on to Esther if she's currently looking after your account. Just a couple of save the dates in there for the upcoming One Connect webinars. So we're going to be doing a deeper dive into NetSuite analytics and exploring analytics in NetSuite. So that's in February. We've got the NetSuite 2025.1 release webinar. So some of you may have joined the last one that we did hosted by Ian. So we've got another one of those that's coming up in March. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then in April, Mark, who is one of our COEs, will be taking us through the NetSuite retail landscape and how to flourish in the retail market with NetSuite. Thank you again very much, everybody, for attending today. And yes, if you do need anything, please feel free to reach out to us, and look forward to seeing you on the next call.